Hi, talking to you today about this knife, the CRKT Amicus. This is a 3-inch blade on a stainless steel frame lock / G10 handle, and it has an aluminium backspacer there. You can feel it's definitely a lighter metal, because you'd think if that was steel it would give it a real weight down, but it doesn't. So for your 110 grams of weight, you get a pretty capable, pretty well-built little sturdy knife. Let's go over the whole thing from front to back, and to do this, so I don't have to keep suspending my hand in the air, we're going down to tabletop. Alright, so it's one of those knives with a real show side, working side. So the show side shows you its G10 handle scale. It doesn't have a liner, however, so if you're too worried about, running your knife over with cars or anything, you might have some issues with, I guess, the G10 not being as strong as the steel on the other side, but that's just something that is a real nitpick that I wouldn't even fault the knife for. It's clearly just a design choice to keep the weight low. I chose to get the Tanto style blade. There are a couple of different blade styles to get. On the display side here, you get the CRKT logo blending into the thumb hole opening mechanism, which opens this knife very smoothly on what are just Teflon washers. It's hard to see in there, but they are just, there you go, you see that white part there, so just Teflon plastic type washers, but they're pretty smooth, not too bad at all. The blade is hollow ground, and then sort of ground flat for the Tanto portion of the blade, and it's in 8CR13 MOV as usual. I really like this backspacer. It's definitely a Vox type design element. You see it in his custom knives, sort of chunky backspacers with lanyard rings incorporated into. And then you turn it over and you get a CRKT pocket clip, which is, it's pretty shallow carry, I must admit. So I'll just show you some clips of it in my pocket. You do get a fair bit of the knife sticking out the top. It's and it's fairly eye-catching bit as well. So you've got two different tones of steel, this big lanyard hole here, which, would you use a lanyard on a knife this long? I don't know. Anyway, so then down here you've got an over travel stop, which is early on the lock bar, which is a little bit different. So that stops the lock bar from being pulled too far over, so it stops there. And then here you've got your lock bar insert, which is screwed on there, so that prevents lock stick. So that's pretty cool. It's it's got features of more expensive knives for the really reasonable price of about $35, I think you pay for it. I reckon this was about $40 getting it over here to me in Australia. So probably in America you're probably paying a bloody $18 for it or something. Really good. Then moving on to the blade, you've got Amicus there, and then you've got Vox design. Now, where have I had a Vox design before?
Hello darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds.
I'm just kidding. That was not Vox fault at all. That was me battening with a knife that shouldn't have been battened with, and it was it was a combination of that and the steel wasn't well done, and that was Boca anyway. So this is a different thing. This is the Amicus made by CRKT. Just to have a bit of a gag there with you like gags, don't you? Good. Alrighty, back to the tabletop. So yeah, I've used the blade a fair bit. I've certainly pushed that 8CR13 MOV steel to the limits. And in use, the hollow grind supports that softer, sort of lower edge retaining steel pretty well, as in it keeps a good work. When you've got something ground really thin behind the edge, even when the edge is quite dull, it'll still push through material quite well. So I did my standard, different various lengths of rope. I did some push cutting on some wire, which did pretty well. And then of course I went on to, what did I do then? I wanted some cardboard, so it's a pretty standard knife review guy thing to do. Ran it through some cardboard, test that stabby tanto tip, all that cool stuff. No problems there at all. Look, it just performs like you'd expect a pocket knife to perform. As in the blade, it's a hollow ground blade that goes dull fairly quickly. It did come really sharp from the factory, which was nice. I haven't had many CRKT knives just yet, so that's a good little thing. It's not the end of the world when a knife comes a bit dull, but it's always nice when it starts on a good foot with you, that's for sure. And of course, because it's a tanto tip, I did try a bit of sort of heavier, stabby, tantally work with it. So I stabbed into a can a few times, and it maintained its complete integrity after that. And this is probably still the sharper bit of the blade rather than this bit. This has gone actually quite dull there, so yeah. But anyway, that's easily remedied. Now the handle. The handle is, it's about a 5 out of 10, folks. It really is. It's not horrible. It's nice and thin. In fact, the whole knife's fairly thin, all good. But there's two things on the handle that don't quite fit me. So, and it's a subtle design language. And if you have a different shaped hand to mine, you're probably not going to notice it as much. But my hand feels like it's pressed between this downward hump and this a bit too tightly. In fact, this bit here, this corner bit, actually feels a little bit uncomfortable pressing against my hand when I grip the knife tightly. So and that's just probably just me, but just in terms of having a little bit too much hump here and a little bit too much kind of beakiness here, it's not ideal. The grip is good. It's not going to come out of your hand at all. There isn't jimping or anything like that. I mean, there's some useless jimping on the spine of the backspacer there, which isn't no point to it or anything like that. But I mean, this slightly aggressive thing here will hold your hand in place, that's for sure. So the handle, it's a bit of a miss for me. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not super ergonomic or anything like that. But for your everyday carry type tasks, which is just your standard cutting and whittling and all that sort of thing, it's not something you're going to notice too often. It was only when I grabbed onto the knife and started doing a repetitive task like cutting cardboard or cutting, when I was shaving some wood, for example, just for testing, of course, that's when I sort of noticed it was a little bit uncomfortable just here and here. Not super thrilled at that. Under here, you've got a sort of, it's not quite a choil, but it sort of could be, but it's just a little bit, it's not a true choil, so you can sort of get your thumb in there, but I think it's more just a sharpening notch, so like a sharpening choil rather than a finger choil. I know the terminology I'm using is probably incorrect, but I don't care. So there's that. In terms of deployment, my cat's going nuts. In terms of deployment, the one main knock I have on this knife is that, I don't know if you can even see it you probably can see it. You see this scale here, it's not obscuring it by line of sight, but it's obscuring it by having that extra thickness. You really can't flick this knife open too well unless you've got a really narrow thumb. I have to kind of jam my thumb fat in there to be able to sort of wind the knife open. So that's just, I don't know again if that's just me, but flicking it open, it's hard. It's a smooth knife. It's just really tricky to get your thumb in there, even whether it's flicking up or flicking to the side. If you use some wrist, it'll come, but yeah, it's just the only other thing I could really fault the knife for. I do like the opening hole though, rather than the thumb stud, because thumb studs can get in the blade in the path of material. Say if you're cutting cheese or something like that, a thumb stud will get in the way there and sort of leave a little mark down the cheese, and whereas the thumb hole doesn't. So I'm happy with that, not too bad. Anyway, overall, I'd probably give this knife about a 6 or a 7 out of 10. The value's there. It's like a $30 knife, really cheap, and it looks like a nice, like it's well designed. It looks cool. Like I like Voxnase's design. It's what introduced me, or what brought me to the Boker Voxrold. He's got a certain sort of like round or holy sort of holy, like, yeah. It's his language is definitely unique to him. You can see a Vox knife pretty well just from a few little flourishes. And yeah, I think he's done really well making this a really good looking knife. I think the handle is going to be a bit, either it fits you or it doesn't. It doesn't quite fit me. And I would love for them to have put a bit more either space here so you could really fling that open, or just perhaps even if you just brought this hole a bit closer and made the blade, I don't know. That could be fixed. Just usually a little cutout would do it. It's quite simply, no problems at all. Anyway, that's the CRKT Amicus. I hope you enjoyed my little video review of it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.